Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rantzerker number 3. Onision something.
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 Crawls out of his own anus and tracks shit all over our nice beige carpet.
Yeah. What was the name that we settled on again?
Internalized Onision or something.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Oh, even when this guy is actually, because I've watched a couple of his videos that I found sort of interesting. Like he did a video of his breakup with his wife, right? His divorce and how she completely fucking screwed him over, right? And I felt bad for the guy, right? This was years ago, 3 years ago or something like that. I felt bad for him, right? Even though he's just one of those people that's just inherently unlikable, right? Like there's something about his personality and his
Delivery,
way of talking and his all of that that just makes me want to just fucking punch him in the face.
but we don't advocate violence, folks.
But we advocate fantasizing about violence for cathartic reasons.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantasizing about it, saying why I oughta, telling my 13-year-old one of these days I'm going to rip your arm off and beat you to death with it. He knows that that's never going to happen. I know that that's never going to happen, but it feels really good to say it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because he's old and he's obnoxious.
Yeah, and in this case, it's even worse.
Oh my God. You know why? It's because this guy comes across as like he's 15, maybe. He's in his 30s.
Really?
He's in his
I thought he was like his early 20s.
Mid 30s.
Well, that makes his sort of life story even more creepy.
And it makes the average age of his mostly female audience even creepier, really. Like when you think about it, he's got all of these sort of preteen and tween and early teenage girls who are all drooling over him, and I guess they're the majority of the people who watch him. So
I think he's got a stable there, and he's going to select some of the more attractive ones to be his sister wives.
I don't know. I don't think so. Like, I don't think he's like that. But I mean, like, he's going for the same audience that Lacey Green is, technically. Like, really.
Oh, it's okay if a guy was to do that, but if you're in your 30s and you're presenting yourself as if you're 15, that is a little bit like it's the same as women who do that. Like, yeah. It's a little creepy. It's a little bit. Act your age. Go after people who are your age.
Yeah, and if your content is only appealing to people who are like 14 years old,
yeah,
and who think you're really cute, and that's probably why they watch him, is because he's like really cute in this kind of non-threatening, slightly effeminate way.
Mm-hmm. But he's actually not non-threatening.
No, of course he's not. But his face is very kind of soft and feminine, and he's got long eyelashes and dreamy eyes and all of that. And
the only thing I can think about is, my husband has aged very well, so he could probably do the same thing as Onision. He's in his 40s, and people think he's in his 20s.
Yeah.
But he also gets like younger women expressing an interest in him. Yeah. But his response is usually no.
Oh, no, like my boyfriend too, right? When I weep every time he shaves off his beard, and it's not necessarily because I know that the whisker burn is coming, but that it's because he looks like he's like 14 years old when he has no facial hair. And I already feel like a cradle robber. I really don't need to feel any more like a cradle robber. And when he talks to women younger than him or even his own age, it just reminds him. He says, it just reminds me of why I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no maturity there.
Well, my husband has said to me, if I leave you, if I ever left you, I'd want to get a woman my own age because I'm 6 years younger than him. Like, okay. Apparently I'm too immature for him.
Oh, well, I don't think you're immature.
I can be.
Maybe a little.
I can. I once laughed for like 15 minutes over a poop joke. So there you go.
Oh, you know, I actually read, there was an article on crack.com years ago called 6 Reasons Why Homemade Porn is a Worse Idea Than You Think. And I read it out loud to my mom, and we almost peed ourselves laughing.
Yeah,
Like,
this is best.
We almost had an aneurysm, a sort of a group aneurysm together, me and my mom laughing over that article because it was quite amusing.
Okay, shall we get
still good? Okay, I guess we should fucking play this. I've been trying. Like,
I think I sense that we're sort of procrastinating here.
I don't want it. I don't want to.
We're shooting the shit, so we don't have to. Don't have to do it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Ready. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Do it on the count of 3.
1, 2,
3.
Hey, there's this incredibly stupid thing on the internet where
there's an incredibly stupid thing on the internet. What a revelation!
Really
okay, come on, that was like 4 seconds there. We got to go further than that.
I know.
All right.
We're really dumb girls.
Why they're against feminism. You people are so fucking stupid.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's a great way to open the dialogue with us there, Onision. You people are fucking stupid.
I know. Well, he's really selling it to me.
Yeah, but fair enough. I mean, we have actually said such similar things to people that are, on the other side of the foosball table.
I don't generally call people stupid. I mean, like, they have to really be willfully, like, a long conversation where they ignore every piece of data I put in front of them before I'll actually come out and call them an idiot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, in my case, I think the only time I've ever done that was something Lacey did. It was like, no, wait, I was stupid bitch. Who did I say that to? I felt bad about it. Like, I don't like to go there, but sometimes it's like, and you know that these people are intelligent. And I actually disagree with Albert Einstein when he says that, stupidity is infinite. The reason why stupidity is infinite is because smart people choose to be stupid. Yeah. And that infuriates me. I know that Lacey can do better. I know that Anita can do better.
There are none so blind as those who will not see.
And the thing is that they're so intelligent in their stupidity, and you can see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it takes a lot of sort of talent to sort of do the gymnastics and twist everything, pretzelize reality to the point where it conforms to your worldview, and then be able to explain all of that in a way that other people are going to buy. Even not everybody, but there are going to be people who are going to be convinced by that, right? So it takes a certain amount of intellect to convince yourself of something that's completely bass-ackwards, right? And convince others of it as well. And I just think that their brains would be put to much better use just actually observing reality as it is.
And maybe inventing things or creating things.
That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, because they're very creative and inventive. Like, that's the thing. I mean, I look at these individuals who espouse this ideology and the gymnastics that they do, and I'm like, wow. I mean, if that was a sport, I would be cheering. I mean, well, like, we're like second 10, so.
Let's continue.
This is me explaining not only why some girls are against feminism, but why you're a total fucking moron for being against feminism. I don't even...
Okay, so he's gonna mansplain. He's gonna mansplain why I'm an idiot for not being a feminist.
I feel very comforted already.
I really do. I really needed a big, strong man with shaggy, artfully teased hair and longer eyelashes than I have. To explain to me exactly why I actually do need feminism, and that I'm a total fucking moron for being against it.
Well, why we're victims of our own intellect, right?
We're victims of our own stupidity. We're victims of our ignorance, and we're victims of our internalized self-hating blah-bitty blah.
Yeah, but we're also victims of our age because we're way too old for Onision to care.
I know. Like, he could have talked about me, not these young hotties with their little signs and their selfies.
Yeah.
But
Onision likes them abdicating their own agency.
I think he does. You know, I think that there's when you're a certain kind of man, it feels really good to hear how powerful men are compared to women, and how much how society looks at you as having a higher status, and how society privileges you, and you know, and so you're just like this big, strong, iconic, masculine figure according to this narrative, right? It's sort of unassailable and invulnerable and you know, so
godlike
and godlike, right? Yeah. And that the women, they really need you to, you know, step in and protect them and tell them what to think and how to feel and all of these things.
I just had a thought, considering his hair and his general demeanor. I mean, it's somewhat androgynous.
Yeah.
Maybe he sort of compartmentalizes that feeling, that desire to feel like hugely potent, that I think a lot of guys have. And it's not a, you know, everybody, to be honest, I have that as well. So I totally understand it. I like the feeling of having control and having influence. That's one of the reasons why feminist theory just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Because if I can rationally argue that, no, I'm not actually that helpless, I'm not going to believe that I'm actually that helpless. But in his case, I think feminist theory allows him to feel very, very masculine, but at the same time evince a very androgynous quality. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like he's put, but let's let him talk, I guess.
Okay.
Feminism, because I'm not a delusional, disgusting, hypocritical man-hater. I respect men, and they respect really. You're not only...
They respect really.
You're going to blindly generalize multiple times, but you're also going to assume that men just automatically respect you.
Well, but didn't you just generalize?
Okay. You're going to automatically assume that men just respect you, right? You're going to assume that men just automatically respect you. Well, you know, most men that I've met don't disrespect me.
But here's the thing, great Karen. You can generalize by assuming men respect you, or you can generalize by assuming men don't respect you. What Onision is saying is that he wants her to generalize in the way that he assumes.
Well, yeah, because then he comes across as the guy who actually does respect her, even though he's calling her a moron.
This is an interesting sort of...
It's like the psychology behind this is just so freaking bizarre.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you're right. Like, for the most part, I would have to agree. Like, generally, there's respect there. I don't really. I mean, there's been a few instances of disrespect, but they're anomalies. They're not. So what? Okay, let's.
Well, and you know, I maybe it has to do with like what I consider to be respect, which is like, just treat me like a person. Don't treat me special. Don't hold the door open for me. Don't offer to help me carry something heavy. Don't offer, you know, like not offering to help me carry something heavy if I'm not asking you to do it. That's showing me respect. It's showing that, you know, you figure that I got my shit under control and I don't need help from some big, strong male stranger.
Well, or maybe we can just, I wonder what Onision considers to be respect.
I have no idea.
Maybe that's where we should start with this line of inquiry. What does this man consider to be respect? We don't know. This is a rhetorical question. Maybe he'll answer at some point.
Maybe, I don't know.
And why does his definition of respect have to be superseded by hers?
Ugh.
Okay, let's
okay.
I'm a man and I don't really respect what you said, because
yeah, but that doesn't mean you don't respect that she's a human being. You just don't respect what she said. Like, okay, lots of people don't respect what I say. I'll say it anyway. That doesn't mean that they're saying I'm like non-human, right? And I don't have a whole lot of respect for the things feminists say. That doesn't mean that I don't respect them as persons deserving of just the general human dignity that we grant to everybody.
Okay, let's let him speak for a bit longer so people can enjoy.
Guess what? You wouldn't have the right to vote without feminists.
Oh, fuck you!
Oh, there. Let it out.
Always. Even if that was true. which it isn't. But even if it was true, what the fuck have they done for me lately? Do I need them to maintain my right to vote? Do I need feminists so that the big bad patriarchy doesn't take my fucking votes away? Right? That somehow the big bad patriarchy will convince 54 to 60% of the voting population to vote away their right to vote? Does he think that that's going to happen ever? What universe does he think we live in where we need a movement to maintain a right that we gained and that gives us the edge politically? We are the majority of voters, women.
Onision, I hate to tell you, but it's far more likely that women will vote to take away men's vote, and that male politicians will agree to it. And there have been periods in time where if you look back in time, there are jurisdictions and areas that women didn't have the right to vote, but could still run as politicians. So there have been groups of people who could run as politicians, but didn't actually themselves have the right to vote. It's happened. Actually, it's much more likely.
I think elected officials should not have the right to vote.
Yeah, but it's much more likely that men will end up not having the right to vote than women. Yeah, considering how much female voters are pandered to.
Well, and just their numbers. Even if female voters weren't pandered to, just their numbers, 54 to 60% of the voting population, of the people who actually vote, not of registered voters, but the people who actually vote are women. Do you think that they're going to vote away their vote? They could very easily vote away men's vote, but they're not going to vote away their own vote.
Yeah. Apparently he thinks that women are so stupid that they cannot vote in their own interests.
Yeah, I know. It's like completely we're just drooling retards, Allison.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for picking this video. And I want to say that one day I will put a pillow over your face and sit on it until you stop squirming, just because you picked this video. And I now am going to wash down an extra strength Tylenol with some wine because I've given myself an aneurysm.
You know that they're going to create fan fiction over that now.
Oh my God. Oh, do we have to continue?
Yes, we got four fucking minutes. We're already 15 minutes into the show, and we got to get through all of it. All right, go. Okay. Do it.
Okay. Do it. You want to have the right to divorce a man without...
Oh, that's so fucking stupid! Men and women had the exact same right to divorce all through history.
Well...
Right? No, they did, because women had to, in some cases, women had to prove cause to a greater degree than men. But that was only because after divorce, men owed women alimony and women owed men nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So it was essentially a way of saying, because he's going to have more liabilities, you have to actually prove that.
Yeah,
the situation.
Instead of proving infidelity, you have to prove infidelity and cruelty. Or you can be like in Iran where she has to have grounds, but the grounds include things like, if he has a job that she finds humiliating, that's grounds for divorce. Or if he doesn't get her pregnant within the first 5 years of the marriage, that's grounds for divorce. Or if he can't get it up, that's grounds for divorce. If he makes her feel belittled and shamed, if he harms her dignity, that's grounds for divorce, okay? Men don't need grounds for divorce. They can divorce a woman at any time. In Iran, they just have to have $50,000 US cash on hand to give to her upon the divorce, or they go to jail, plus monthly alimony for the rest of her life or until she gets married again.
And I might also add that prior to Blackstone's formulation, the laws of England, if we're talking about because we're Americans, we're North Americans, so our cultural tradition is basically, Britain and Europe. So if we want to look in the past at our legal tradition, that's probably where we should look. In a lot of cases, the medieval social attitudes, legality around divorce, and look at the stuff that they would, if a woman alleged that her husband was impotent, look at what he would have to do to actually, and that was grounds for divorce in Middle Ages for women.
And to not be divorced and have to pay out all of that alimony, right? Until she remarried, or for the rest of her life if she didn't, he would have to be able to prove that he could get it up.
Yeah, and if you look at the circumstances in which he had to prove that he could get it up, it was essentially the wise women of the village would be scrutinizing his crotch, and if he couldn't get an erection,
down, tackle out.
If he couldn't get an erection while a bunch of old crones were poking at him, he got divorced. That basically women in the history, in legal history in the Middle Ages, they could get divorced whenever they wanted just by alleging impotence and putting their fucking husbands through that excruciatingly humiliating ordeal.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no. How many guys listening do you think, listening now, how many of you think that you could manage to pass that impotence test?
Yeah.
Literally, you're in a fucking courtroom with a judge and a bunch of women, old women, not young women, old women, the old wise women, with all hunched over, examining you.
Yeah, and you know what? My boyfriend could do it. He'd just be like, "Oh, these ladies have no teeth."
Yes, Jesus Christ! But anybody else would
think about the implications of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he could do it, but then he's
a freak.
Typical, yeah. He's not your typical guy. But I just this whole thing, you wouldn't have the right to divorce. Fault divorce existed for both men and women. No fault divorce when it came in, it exists for both men and women. Divorce is accessible to both men and women. It always has been.
Yep. Okay, let's go on.
About feminists. You wouldn't have anything near equal pay as men without feminists.
Well, the thing is that the Equal Pay Act came in.
There's no evidence that the Equal Pay Act actually fixed a problem.
All right, but here's the thing. I've looked at historical documents again from this region, and this is one of the problems that I have with all of this feminist imaginings is they cast a really wide net and get very specific, and you can't do that. Talk about this region, the Western culture legal tradition. In our culture, there are historical documents where people or employers would discriminate against men who did not have families or wives. They would literally say, you cannot apply for this job unless you're married and have kids.
Bachelors need not apply.
Bachelors need not apply. So, and this is in situations like this was during the Depression.
Yep.
So men who did not have children and kids would be turned away from jobs that would keep them alive. And think about that for a second. In that context, of course, women are going to be paid less.
Well, but the thing is, though, is that women and men typically have always done, on average, different jobs, right? So you can say, like, freaking Naomi Wolf. She was like, and women, they were paid much less when they worked, in the coal industry than men in the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, because they were shoveling fucking coal onto lorries. They weren't going underground. They weren't risking their lives and their health. They were doing the equivalent of light duty. They were doing the job that would be assigned to an injured man while he was injured until he recovered and was sent back to heavy duty.
Okay, and that has to be taken into consideration. But the other thing that, like I was saying, the consideration that they would discriminate against men who were not supporting women.
Yeah,
that's not a consideration for the women.
Well, let's look at this stupid and this has come up, several times in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, the mid to late 1800s, right? In the U.S., what state was it? Michigan, right? Men outnumbered women in Michigan at the time in 1895 or whatever it was, right? They outnumbered women by something like 30,000. Right? There were 30,000 more men than women in Michigan, but there were 27,000 unmarried women of age 25 or 26, right? Who could not find men willing to marry them. And women's activists of the day were proposing a bachelor tax, right? So that they would actually tax single men in order to pay for the upkeep of these single women who could not convince a man to marry them. Rather than suggest that these women maybe go out and be a governess or a housekeeper or, a cook in a household, or, a laundress, or a school marm, or, a nurse, or any one of those things, those vocations that were open to women, right? And that have always been open to women, right? And yeah, it's going to suck, right? Because you're a middle-class young woman, and now you're going to be a working-class single woman living in a rented room and barely making ends meet. But you know what? That's what you have to do to survive if you don't have a man to take care of you, and you haven't been able to convince a man to take care of you, right? Rather than suggest that these women do that and be independent and look after themselves. No, the suggestion was, we're going to tax single men and use that money to pay the way of all of these single women.
So the basic thing you can get out of this is that there was a huge social impetus for men to pay for women, to make sure that women were paid for, and to provide for them. And in that context, you cannot take the differential in wages outside of that context, because there are other ways men were discriminated against in terms of wages, in terms of jobs, to enforce the fact that men were expected to give money to women and pay for them.
Well, they weren't just expected to, they were legally obligated to. A man was legally obligated to support his wife, and not just put a roof over her head and clothes on her back and food in her belly, but to support her to the level at which he was able. So if he was a wealthy man, but miserly, right, he could be charged with a crime for not buying his wife clothing that was suited to his status as someone with money.
And in response to this expectation, men were paid more than women.
Oh my God, what an injustice.
Just fuck. You know what? I cannot, because we've never addressed, or we don't look at the fact that we would literally, men who had no ability to support themselves get no handouts. Like, they wouldn't get a handout from the government like unmarried women. Bachelor men, we would just roll them into ditches to die.
Yeah.
And we are complaining about the fact that in that time period, our ancestors paid women less.
Yeah, no, and what really drives me crazy is that children's privilege, right? Children's privilege for men ended at between 18 and 21. That was when his parents were no longer considered legally responsible for his survival, right? And they could just kick him out of the house, sometimes earlier. They could just kick him out of the house and say, you're on your own, take care of yourself. Children's privilege for women lasted until either they married or they died.
Yeah. So essentially, we're talking about a society in which women could be expected to be supported by the government. They could be expected to be supported by their parents, and they could be expected to be supported by their husband
and their sons and their brothers.
And their brothers. They could be expected to be supported by all kinds of different people. And wow.
Yeah.
Men got paid more because they had the expectation of supporting more people.
Yeah.
And ironically, if you actually included the bachelors, which were paid nothing and given no jobs, I doubt they were paid more.
Yeah, no, if you actually included all of those single men who got nothing because they were discriminated against. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't ever talk about the discrimination against single men who are only supporting themselves in history.
We don't even talk about things like it was called a marrying wage. And that was something that all single men were working towards having. They were working towards having a marrying wage because no father would ever allow his daughter, no father of quality would allow his daughter to marry some pauper. It had to be a young, responsible man who was earning enough money to support a family. Right? There was none of this bullshit, I'm going to marry the guy who plays in a garage band down the street, right? No, like parents a woman would have to elope in order to do that. She would have to run off to Gretna Green or whatever and get married, right?
A lot of people have questioned why I use an analogy here to times where there was slavery. First of all, there's different kinds of slavery throughout history. Like each society that had slavery often approached it in different ways. Those societies that maintained slavery for like centuries had certain a certain way of going about it that maintained it socially. And one of that ways was that they would pay and offer fewer jobs to the people who weren't slaves, who weren't classed as slaves.
Yeah.
In Roman times, the Roman citizens could have 3 jobs: farmer, soldier, or statesman. That was it. And slaves could do all of the jobs that we would classify as white collar as well as labor jobs. And in particular, what was really interesting is probably the most longest running slave owning society was the Ottoman Empire. And they would actually take the sons of Christian slaves, put them through an enormous ordeal that would kill a lot of them. And then at the end of it, they would induct them into a corps, like brainwash them into Islam and induct them into a corps of servants to the empire. And that these slaves would be allowed to take jobs and keep their income. And they were allowed to take very high positions in the empire, including positions that were effectively running that empire. And they amassed immense amounts of wealth. These were slaves who were amassing immense amounts of wealth and highly prestigious leadership positions. And
free men.
But they weren't free. And the reason why they were allowed to do this was precisely because they were slaves. Because you could take children of slaves and put them through an ordeal in which many of them ended up raped, many of them ended up dead in a ditch. But at the end, you could you could take the cream of the crop that actually survived like a 100-mile march and forced, indoctrination into a new religion. You could take the cream of the crop and you would create a group of people who would serve the empire unquestioningly. Yeah. And it's like, this is the situation. Men earned more, and there are situations throughout history where slaves earned more. But the expectation of who ended up getting the money at the end of the day, either government enforced or socially enforced, was not the slaves.
Yeah.
And so if you look at a wage gap, even if it's in law, like it was with the Ottoman Empire, Turkish nobles weren't allowed to have those positions in the empire. They weren't allowed to have those prestigious leadership positions. They weren't allowed to have amass that wealth, although they were wealthy. But they were excluded. But at the same time, they were not slaves. They had
higher status.
They had higher status. It doesn't matter. Who earns the money doesn't matter. It's who is expected to receive the benefit at the end of the day that matters.
Yeah.
And in our society and in the past, the benefit of that money very clearly and explicitly, everybody, the government, the families, everyone said the benefit of any money that men earn has to go to women, period. Yeah. And in that context, it makes sense that they would say that men should earn more. And that isn't actually discrimination against women unless you also address the fact that men were expected to pay women. And if they couldn't, if they didn't have a woman to pay, they were considered expendable. Just go die in a ditch. You don't have to, you aren't able, you don't have a woman, you haven't convinced a woman to marry you, then you don't get the funds. You don't get the money. You don't get the income because this income is supposed to go to women.
Well, look at the trope. The trope, please don't hurt me. I have a wife and children, right? Like the highwayman, he's gonna kill you, but if you tell him you have a wife and children, he might have mercy on you, right? Not for your sake, but for their sake.
All right, but we should probably.
Oh, okay, all right.
For all we know, women would literally be treated like cattle.
Cattle!
Holy fuck.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The word is chattel, and it doesn't apply, but please, if you're gonna be completely fucking bullshitty, right? If you're gonna completely be bullshitty, at least be bullshitty properly and use the right word. The word is chattel. not cattle.
That's right. Yeah, chattel. Like, no, let's go with cattle. Throughout definitely
all of history, men, when the milk dried up, men were allowed to kill their wives and send them to a slaughterhouse, have them turned into roast and sausages and chops and soup bones, and shipped back and to their home, and then they would over the months they would eat their wives, because that's what was perfectly legal to do to women.
Okay, people are going to say that's a straw man, but here's the thing. Here is the thing.
Well, you can do that to cattle, can't you?
Yeah, I know. It's fucking. Oh, you're right. You're right. The straw was his.
Yeah, no, and you could do it to chattel too. Oh, my chattel, okay? Real property is houses and land. Chattel is everything else. Money, goods, valuables, possessions, right? Dishes, silverware, hammers, biscuit joiners, spirit levels, floor tiles, and things like that. Okay. I can buy them, I can sell them, I can trade them, I can give them away, I can take them to the dump and toss them on the pile, I can abandon them, I can neglect them, and I can destroy them at my will. I own those things. They are mine to do with as I please. I can fucking take my spirit level, whack it against the side of my house, destroy it, damage my house. Nobody fucking cares. It's my house. As long as I don't defraud the insurance company for it, nobody can arrest me for that. Nobody has any right to say I can't do that to my chattels. Right? I can roll up $100 bill, wipe my ass with it, light it on fire, light my cigarette with it. I can do whatever I want with that $100 bill. I can spend it on something. I can trade it for something else, whatever. I can do that with my chattel. Can I do any of those things? Can I take my wife, 100, 200, I'm a man 300 years ago. Can I take my wife to the dump and just kick her in the hole? Can I take her out in the woods like my dog when I can't afford to feed it? Can I take her out in the woods and just leave her there? And say, oh, have a nice life, Rover, right? and then drive home? Like, could I do that? Was that legal for me to do? Could I kill my wife because, hey, I'm allowed to destroy my own property?
The answer is no.
No.
And in fact, that people are not legally obligated for the support of their chattel. No. They aren't. This is a complete legal, like the legal position of women in the past and the legal position of chattel, Onision, are so different that you aren't. But the thing is that this is the thing. Like these individuals, these assert this shit about history, and they don't actually look at it.
No, they don't.
This is such for pernicious ignorance, and it's fucking infuriating. And we should continue because we're like half an hour in, and we've done less than a minute.
Oh,
without feminists, is this how you want to look? You want to be walking around the street?
Okay. So I'm watching this video, and I think it was shot in Iran, might have been Iraq, right? And it's of this woman, and she's wearing snug jeans, and she's wearing one of those t-shirts similar to what I wore to Airplay, which is like a nice fitted t-shirt with a deep V-neck, right? And showing off all of her curves and everything, right? No head covering whatsoever. And she's just sitting on a stoop and in front of a house, and she's smoking a cigarette. And a bunch of guys, kind of approach her, and they're all talking with her in a friendly manner, and she's talking back in a friendly manner, and they're very interested in talking to her, right? And she gets up and she starts walking, and they're walking with her, and they're all talking and laughing, la, 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 right? And they're very interested in her because she's not wearing a head covering, and she's not wearing a modest clothing, and she's not covered up in any way, right? And she's showing off her body, and they're talking with her, and then, okay, right at the very end of the video, what do you see? What do you hear? A woman screaming at her that she's sinfully immodest. Do we really think that it's not women who enforce this on other women?
Well, I mean, feminists enforce it on women.
Yeah,
Except they do it in a very roundabout way. Mm-hmm. They do it by removing. If the more clothing you take off, the more feminists remove your agency and say that you're a victim. And it's actually, if you think about it, they disrespect your personhood. They disrespect your personal choices. It's almost like they're using recognition of you as a person as a tool to enforce behavior. So feminists will say to women, the less you wear, the more you try to appeal to men, the less of a real person you are.
Well, the less of a real person you're seen as by those men.
Well, and by them too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones doing it.
Look at it this way. Like, how dare you tell a woman what she should and shouldn't wear? Okay. Unless it's feminists talking about how characters in video games and comic books are dressed, right? Then slut shaming is totally okay, right? Then criticizing a woman.
Or cosplayers.
Is just perfectly fine.
Let us continue.
Streets with only a little bit of skin showing. You really want to be treated like property. You want.
All right. I gotta do this, right? I gotta do this, Karen. Okay, Onision, you don't understand the circumstance that they're in the Middle East. If you look at the rates of violence in the Middle East and you look at who gets targeted and who ends up getting killed, the more a combatant can control the target of their violence, the more likely they are to choose a man. So if it's a bomb in a public place, it tends to be equal numbers men and women are killed. If it's a sniper, it's goes up to 90% men, because they can tell the difference and they'll choose men. They'll prefer to choose men. Combatants will prefer to choose men. If it's a kidnapping, you're looking at 95% men. If it's a kidnapping and murder, murder, torture to death, 99% of those victims are men. Because at each stage, the aggressor can choose, has more ability to choose who the violence is targeting. They can choose. The more they can choose, the more they will choose a man. In that circumstance, having a highly visible marker of being female that you can see from from I don't know, maybe not a mile, but these women, you know that they're women. You'll know that they're women from a distance. And you'll know in this context that they're exempted from violence. And incidentally, in the Middle East and in third world countries, women are, I think, 3 to 4 times less likely to die violently. So this signifier actually is protective of their personal safety. They are saying, I am a woman from a great distance. Yeah. It's also probably why men who want to go undercover or infiltrate or terrorists often don the garb.
Yeah, no, they had to in Turkey, I believe, for a while there, they banned the veil because men were dressing as women and donning the veil and committing terrorist attacks.
Yeah, because they're less suspected and they can move more freely. Isn't that interesting?
I know. It's just so strange that they can move much more freely. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was after they did that video on the catcalling in New York, right? 10 hours walking in New York and all the catcalling, somebody did a video of a very attractive Muslim woman walking in, just sort of dressed like the woman in the original video, right? And she was getting some catcalls, but then she put on over her snug shirt, she put on a cardigan, and then she put the hijab on, and nobody bothered her. It's essentially saying it's a signal. Clothing is a signal. Onision, try watching What Not to Wear. The clothes that you choose tell people things about you, right? And so when a woman puts on a hijab, what that says is that I adhere to Islamic cultural mores, and that means I really don't want random men hitting on me. That's not what I'm about.
Okay, I want to address something I just saw in chat.
Mm-hmm.
Pyro 314 says, in Afghan recently, there was a local cop that raped a 14-year-old. His punishment was a day in jail and the girl was forced to marry him. I'm a feminist because that still goes on in the world. Okay, are you in Afghanistan stopping that?
Okay, number two, you have to, Pyro, you have to realize that the definition of rape in countries like India, highly traditional countries like India, Afghanistan, and places like that, is any sex had involving an unmarried virginal woman. So even if it's consensual in India, even consensual sex between unmarried persons,
well, this was Afghanistan,
is considered to be rape. And it's the same thing in Afghanistan, right? It's essentially
well, she was probably like, the thing is that here, let me interject. Yeah, if that is correct, that is horrible. Why are you using situations like that to make commentary on what's happening in our society?
Yeah, in our country.
In our country.
At the same,
that's not.
And then I have to address this. Like, if a man, like, okay, in the Bible, right? You know, if a man rapes a virtuous unmarried woman, right? You know, he has to pay her father 30 pieces of silver or whatever the hell it is, and then he has to marry her if that's what her parents want, right? Because unmarried women had no right to consent to sex. Any sex an unmarried woman had, even if she wanted it, even if she initiated it, was still considered a rape against her.
Okay, and so first of all, we're dealing with issues of what constitutes rape, because often what they would refer to as rape would be actually consensual sex with the male that the parents didn't approve of. But in this circumstance, Pyro, did you know, and I want you to answer in chat, did you know that it's epidemic raping boys in Afghanistan? And does that mean that you are now a men's rights activist because you want to stop the rape of boys in Afghanistan?
95% of the child sexual abuse going on in Afghanistan, so any rape or sexual assault or whatever against minors, 95% of it in Afghanistan is against boys.
Okay, so now that we've given you a statistic, Pyro, we expect that you are going to tell us that because there's such a high rate of rape of boys in Afghanistan and nobody seems to care about it, there isn't an organization in there caring about it.
Soldiers have been ordered to ignore it.
Yeah, but there's, like you said, there is a feminist organization addressing the rape of girls, but no organization addressing the rape of boys. Are you now going to say that you're a men's rights activist because of that? And how many examples do we need, Pyro? How many examples do we need before you are going to actually care about the rape of boys? And believe me, this isn't just in India or in South Africa. Now, we don't have really good statistic on the sexual abuse of boys, but there's huge amounts of sexual abuse of boys in South Africa, in the Middle East, in India, that nobody is addressing. Nobody cares about.
Well, you know, the reason why it's so prevalent in those places is because it actually, the boys are a stand-in for the girls who are off limits, right?
Yeah.
Like it's essentially, even in Afghanistan, they're called dancing boys, and it's usually prepubescent and pubescent boys who dress like women and dance like women. They're trained to behave like women for the entertainment and sexual gratification of powerful men, right? So essentially you have boys essentially taking the role of female prostitutes, right? So that girls will remain exempt from that kind of abuse. And the murder rate among these boys is astoundingly high. It's unbelievably high. That, you know, when they get too old, when their voices crack, you know, when they're no longer convincing, oftentimes they're the people who they're masters or whatever, they just dispose of them. They become an inconvenience. If they're lucky, they live long enough to become the groomers of the next generation of boys.
Let me tell you something. I'm addressing Pyro in the chat again. We, myself, and the other people that I have journeyed with involved in men's rights issues or men's issues, we are the ones who have been talking about the problems of sexual violence against boys in these areas well before the New York Times talked about it. The fact that we don't get much of a platform is not our fault.
No.
We have been trying to bring attention to these issues. No one cares. And in fact, there's a huge social push against caring. You have NGOs, you have non-government organizations who literally have policies saying that they do not talk or want to help men and boys who are raped. And we are fighting against these issues. I've known about the level of sexual violence towards men and boys in the Congo, in the Middle East, in South Africa, in India for years now. And I have been trying to get people to recognize it in whatever way I can. But I apologize that I have absolutely no platform and no money to do it. So I have to do it in the ways that are available to me, which includes this radio show.
Yeah. No, it's infuriating because, you know, like you can actually go into not just the NGOs, but the massive charities that fund them, like Oxfam, right? Oxfam has told NGOs working in the Congo, if you're not spending 85% of the money we give you on women victims, right? 85%, we're not going to fund you anymore. Right? So male victims of rape, and some of these men are so physically damaged by what's been done to them that they are incontinent. They're fecally incontinent. The moment that their wives realized what happened to them, their wives packed up the kids and left, just abandoned them because, hey, if he can be raped, who's protecting me? Right? And they go into a doctor that's funded by an NGO, and the doctor will hand him a Prozac and say, that's all I can do for you.
It's fucking, and what really gets me is I have been doing everything I can for 12, 15 years to bring attention to the overlooked victims of sexual assault, men and boys. And that's what it's been limited to is writing articles and blog posts, posting on comment sections of things that present sexual violence as something that men do rather than something that's also done to men, and that women also perpetuate, and that, you know, men can be victims, women can be victims of women, men can be victims of men, and also of women. That's all that has been available to me. You think I wouldn't love to have the government come and approach me and say, hey, you know, this is an important issue.
Yeah, why don't we have you speak at the UN like Zoe Quinn?
Why don't we have you, or not even me, but just anybody involved in this, why don't we address this issue? Why don't we put together some way of helping these boys and men? You don't think that I wouldn't fucking love that? That I'd not love it, but would want that, would be all over that. And guess what? It doesn't fucking happen because no one cares. So I do what I fucking can.
You know, like it's not even just that no one cares. It's that people are actively engaged in demonizing the people who speak about it. Right? So people like you and me, right? People like Toy Soldier, people like Adam Jones, right? Are actively demonized by feminists. We're called a hate group. We're called a bunch of misogynists. We just hate women. This is the only reason why we would. Not only do we only do this to hate women, we don't do anything to actually help men. Well, you know what?
We can't. We don't have the fucking resources. I'm sorry.
Every fucking person that, you know, like this drove me crazy with Earl Silverman, right? Because here he is, 20-year fucking quest to get funding from the government for his domestic violence hotline that he ran for 20 years out of his own pocket, right, for men. And then a shelter that he ran for 2 years, right? So for 20 years, he's trying to get funding. He got a single one-time grant of $800 from the government. After that, right, he would approach the provincial government for funding. The provincial government would say domestic violence is considered a women's issue in Canada, so it needs to be vetted by the Status of Women, needs to be vetted by the Minister for the Status of Women. So he would write to Status of Women Canada, and they would say, we have no mandate to help male victims. You'll have to go to the province because the province is responsible for funding. He would go back to the province and say, Status of Women Canada, sent me back to you to ask for funding. They would say, we can't release funds for the purpose of funding domestic violence services without the authority of Status of Women Canada, because domestic violence is considered a women's issue. So he would go back to Status of Women Canada, and he would be sent back to the province, and then he would be sent, and he did this for years, okay? So he finally decides that he's going to file a human rights complaint about discrimination against male victims of domestic violence. The first time he was denied a hearing, it was because males are not considered a protected group under human rights legislation in Canada, right? They are not considered a protected group. Therefore, it is perfectly legal for anyone, including the government, to discriminate against them, because discrimination against men is not a concept that exists in human rights law. Okay? So it's perfectly legal for anybody to treat men however they want, including the government, right? Equality legislation does not apply to men. Human rights legislation does not apply to men. So then he submits an argument, an appeal, and an argument that as the situation changes, as society changes, so the law must change. And as certain changes happen, right, the status of women is raised, other groups may end up in the shadows and be unprotected, like men, right? And the judge, the adjudicator, agreed with him that yes, the law should change with the times, and that he made a very good argument in his favor. However, as there is no department or body or ministry or even individual in the entire government at every level, there is not a single entity whose responsibility it is to fund male victims of domestic violence. There's no one for him to sue for discrimination, right? And he can't sue Status of Women Canada because Status of Women Canada is a ministry that is dedicated to women's issues, and domestic violence is considered a women's issue, policy-wise, politically, right? So he was denied a hearing, even though he made a very persuasive argument. Second time, denied a hearing, no funding, no hearing, no nothing, right? And nothing on the public record either. Then he decided he was going to make a tactical move and say something that could be perceived as threatening to one of the two lawyers, right? He's representing himself pro se, and he's up against two lawyers, one from the government, one from the feminist network of women's shelters, provincial network of women's shelters, right? And he said something in a brief that he filed that could be interpreted as threatening. And he was hoping to get charged. He was hoping to get charged because if it went to a criminal trial, it would all come out on the public record.
Here's what's terrifying.
The moment that they realized that it would all come out on the public record, they dropped the charges.
Here's what's terrifying in all of this.
After he hanged himself, right? After he had to give up his shelter because he couldn't pay for it anymore out of his own pocket, and he hanged himself, feminists came out of the woodwork to say that this man, he was a misogynist, he was difficult, he was angry, he was bitter, and he was simply unwilling to work within the fucking system!
All right. Pyro has said, my objection is ignoring the actions that would improve the world, like pushing feminism in Saudi Arabia because of petty first world squabbles. First of all, that's not petty. The fact that men in the first world who are suffering from domestic violence are more likely to be arrested than their abusers is not petty. Second of all, your interventions, your feminist interventions in Saudi Arabia, how are they going to help the sexually abused boys in Saudi Arabia? You're just going to decide which victims you care about, which isn't an intervention. It's using victims to perpetuate your own narrative.
And how is feminism? How is the lens of feminism, which is like, it's a society of male dominance, and these burqas that you see, right? These are imposed by women on, by men on women, That's what feminism says. They're imposed by men on women to keep women subordinate, right? How is that going to help get these women out of these burqas when these women are in these burqas because other women impose this on them, and because according to these women, these burqas give them more freedom of movement, give them a way of being in public without having to endure the gaze of unworthy males who have no right to look at them, okay? And that this is a female thing, like genital mutilation for women, right? For girls. It's perpetuated by women, often against the objections of a girl's father or a woman's husband, right? It's a woman thing. Now, how is the lens of patriarchy and male dominance and men dictate everything and women are just helpless subordinates? How is that going to fix the burqa? How is it going to fix female genital mutilation? How is it going to fix any of this shit when it's women imposing this on other women?
Well, it doesn't. It's not going to fix anything, but it continues the justification for this fundamentalist belief that, and I know there are feminists who may not have this belief, but this fundamentalist belief that you can reduce women down to victims in every single circumstance, and what men into perpetrators. But we've been discussing the chat for too long. I think we need to get back to an Onision.
Okay.
Let's try to get through about a minute.
Okay.
World destined to be sold off to the highest bidder. Is that really what you fucking want? Because in our history is the overwhelming tendency for women to be oppressed. And when
okay, stop it. Onision? What I have noticed from human history is that any situation where women agreed to, and it generally was a situation where women agreed to having their rights and freedoms reduced, it was because some man said exactly what you're saying here. If you don't, the bad men will get you. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that. I'm not going to allow you to use the threat of the bad men to force me to think anything, do anything, or submit to anything, Onision. Because I don't believe, I'm not afraid of other men. I'm more afraid of you. I'm afraid of the men who say things like, you need to do X because otherwise the bad men will get you. Fuck you. Let's go on.
The entire narrative of female oppression, if you go back through history at any given point, right, along all the exact same metrics that we use to determine that blacks, right, are disadvantaged compared to whites. So life expectancy, general level of health, general level of concern, right, from governmental bodies and educational attainment and all of these things, right? Like, does Onision know that in the 1920s in the US, 7% of men and 6% of women had post-secondary education? There was near parity in the 1920s, right? What got men that boost, what made men the overwhelming majority in universities and colleges was not patriarchy, it was the GI Bill. It was a gift from government to veterans who had served their country, often injured and disabled veterans, right? Saying, we're going to give you money to start a business. We're going to give you a loan to buy a house. We're going to give you money and a grant and a bursary and a loan to get an education, right? And because it was men who were draftable, right? It was men who served for the most part, and it was men who benefited from the GI Bill.
Okay, let's try to get through a minute. Like we got through, I think, 10 seconds.
Okay.
Yes, they need someone to stand up and say, this is fucking bullshit and it needs to change.
Okay, well, why can't the people who are oppressed, right? Okay, like, okay, let me just say, right? When it comes to the driving ban in Saudi Arabia, right? Who's speaking up and saying, this needs to change? It's mostly women in Saudi Arabia, right? It's not most of women, because 80% of women in Saudi Arabia don't want the driving ban lifted. It's the 20% who do want it lifted with conditions, because they want like women only lanes and stuff, because, like don't want to be treated equal to men. They still want to be treated special, right? Who's actually driving that? Who's actually doing that? It's the women themselves. It's women themselves complaining, right? Women have a massive, huge, storied history of complaining and getting their way.
Well, it's the reality is that when the majority of women in Saudi Arabia want the driving ban lifted, it'll be lifted. But let's move on. Let's get through that minute.
Okay.
Very difficult to do that without feminists. 14 women say they don't need feminism, aka 14 dumb motherfuckers. I don't need feminism because I respect all humans, not just one gender. It's not about females being better than men. It's about women having the same rights as males.
Which they do, and then some.
Yeah, definitely in Western world. Let's move on.
Oh, God.
How does that not register in your brain? Is it that...
Because women have equal rights to men and then some. That's why it doesn't register.
And also because you're using feminism as an excuse to treat us disrespectfully, Onision. So, I'm trying not to tell him to fuck himself, but
No, he can fuck himself.
Feminists have been fighting so hard for so long that you've finally gotten so comfortable with the lifestyle these women earn for you that you no longer appreciate it like some spoiled fucking brat that was born with a silver spoon in its mouth.
Okay, all right. No, Onision. It wasn't the suffragettes who got the vote. It was the labor movement.
Yeah, and the Chartists and the Rhode Island Rebellion and a lot of men who actually died. They died in riots. They died in prison. And a lot of them were exiled. They were sent to like freaking Australia.
Okay, but here's
how many suffragettes died, Onision? One suffragette died because she engaged in a publicity stunt that was ill-planned.
Okay.
Wanted to pin a suffragette banner on the king's horse as it rounded the fucking corner at the racetrack and got trampled.
All right, but here's what Onision, does it occur to you that I care about more than just myself?
No, it really doesn't.
That I actually care a great deal about the other half of the human race. And I want to make sure that they aren't harmed. And that if they are expected to have an expectation from the government that my half of the human race doesn't have, that they get something in return for that. That's my position. Maybe I don't. I mean, it's the feminist approach to being female is so solipsistic. You only, as a woman, you only care about your own rights. You only care about how things affect you as a woman. That's it. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in caring about other people besides myself and people who don't actually resemble myself.
This is the thing. Like, I was actually sitting at the Slut Walk in Edmonton when I went with Lauren Southern. I was sitting on a bench, and one of the guys that was there, he asked me, like, I just, because you're divorced, and you could have, like, I don't understand why you oppose him, because you benefit from all of these things. You benefit from the child support laws, you benefit from the alimony laws, you benefit, and I'm like, I don't view justice. I don't define justice as whatever benefits me.
Whew, shocker. Okay, let's try to get through.
August 18 this year. Gender pay gap. Female bosses earn 35% less than male colleagues. Obviously, there's a huge fucking problem here even today. People.
Really?
Well, we'd have to actually look at the study first before we pass judgment.
We would really have to look at the study. But, honestly, every time I hear this claim, women earn less on, at this, women earn less at that. Even male nurses earn more than female nurses. Well, you know what? Male nurses are more willing to do overnight shifts.
And also do tasks that require labor or more dangerous tasks.
Yeah.
Okay, but I've also seen a study that said the opposite, but let's try to get through that minute.
Who do the same job with the same quality and effort deserve the same.
Wait. Do we know that?
No, we don't.
Have you actually read that study, Onision? I don't think you have.
No, right. I don't think he has either.
Probably an aggregate.
Like, even with nursing, there's so many different levels of nursing that you can have. levels of education, levels of expertise, levels of seniority, levels of, to just say male nurses earn more than female nurses. Well, maybe they do, right? Maybe they're more likely to be in administration. Maybe the reason they're more likely to be in administration is because people feel uncomfortable when male nurses are giving hands-on care.
Yeah.
And so they actively seek promotion to positions where they're pushing paper.
Mm-hmm. All right. Move
and
it.
not wiping people's bottoms.
Let's get that red bar moving.
Doesn't matter if they're a girl or a boy. So to reduce this pay gap that still exists today, who are you going to rely on? This chick holding up a sign, ignorantly protesting feminism, an idea that exists to fight for the sign holder.
Okay, stop. Because he's right in my hobby horse.
Yeah.
Onision, since the 1980s, the mid-1980s, the number of women in STEM has gone down 20%. Nobody can explain why.
Not the number, the ratio.
The ratio. Nobody can explain why. But I have a theory. It's because certain groups of people are pushing a fundamentalist, black and white view of gender onto girls, and it harms boys, but let's just look at girls for a second, onto girls in which they are encouraged to reduce themselves down to victims in every conceivable circumstance. And that means when girls encounter something difficult, they just throw up their hands and say, I can't do it. I'm just an acted upon little girl because feminism taught me so. You fundamentalist, you grinning fundamentalist jackass.
Yeah.
You're promoting a gender fundamentalism that we have never seen throughout human history. You're trying to make the divide between the genders so vast that we might as well be different goddamn fucking entities entirely.
I just want to know how he explains, right, the fact that when it comes to STEM fields, women in China, women in Iran, women in India make up a bigger proportion of the people in STEM fields than women in Sweden and the US and Canada and the UK, right? How does he explain that? These very traditional, very patriarchal societies where women are, what he would consider to be legally second-class citizens, and yet they are more likely to choose to study, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics than women in the West. How does he explain that?
And the wage gap is also less large.
Oh yeah, no, the narrowest wage gap, I believe, is in like Sierra Leone or Sri Lanka or one of those weird countries that's third world countries that starts with S.
Okay.
That's the lowest wage gap, and the lowest gender segregation in the workforce is the lowest in places like China.
Okay, this comes to mind. One feminist father's solution to the wage gap, which was to earn more and give it to his daughter.
Yeah,
how does that change how much she earns?
Yeah, no, it doesn't, and it won't. It'll just give her incentive to earn less because she's always got that extra money to fall back on.
Yeah, exactly. The more you give, the more you expect men to give to women, the less women have to earn for themselves. It's fucking ridiculous. Okay, let's get through this minute. Or let's get through this shit.
What was that one thing that was it Warren Farrell or was it Roy Baumeister who said, there was a teenage boy and a teenage girl and they got the same allowance, and the boy was asking his sister, like, why do you always have money and I don't have money? And his sister said, because I have a boyfriend and you have a girlfriend.
Okay, but let's move on.
To hold up a sign saying you're against feminism, I beg you, do it with a burqa on. At least then you would be honest about your real position.
I'm going to buy a burqa now. I'm going to do it just to fuck Onision. I might cut out like a panel in the front for my boobs. But, but I think I really want a burqa now.
Okay.
Who are too fucking stupid to look up the definition of feminism.
Dictionary definition fallacy. Oh my goodness.
Okay, this is what's hilarious is that feminists are, at least in this case, They're like a road crew standing by an enormous pothole doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then when you go up to the road crew, you say, there's a pothole here. Why don't you fill it? They say, well, the dictionary definition of a road crew is that we fix the roads. And it's like, well, why aren't you actually doing it? I'm not talking about the dictionary definition. I'm talking about your fucking behavior right at this moment. You're not actually fixing any goddamn roads.
Yeah.
And this we're not talking about the feminist definition. We're not talking about the dictionary definition of feminism. We're talking about the behavior of feminists.
Okay.
And you can't do the exact opposite of the dictionary definition of feminism and then point to it and say, hey, well, this is what we're actually doing. Well, no, you're not fixing the roads. You're not a road crew if you're not fixing the roads. Maybe you're not a feminist if you're not doing equality.
Well,
I don't care.
Is that women have equal political rights, they have equal social rights, and they have equal economic rights.
Okay, Karen, I have to go to the bathroom and I'm tired of looking at this man's face. So let's get the fuck through this.
Well, okay, you and me both, but I guess I have to entertain the chat or something.
No, just play the fucking video. Let's get through it.
No, I'm not going to play the video. I'm not going to play the video without you. You have to do this.
No. I'm going to stay. I'm just going to chance irreparable bladder damage to fucking finish
you're
this
gonna mute
shit.
your mic and pee. Don't listen.
No, I'm not going to go to the bathroom, woman. Play the video. I'm going to wait till it's done.
God damn it.
Before you make one of those asinine signs full of ignorance, this is the
ignorance. Ignorance, like the pig up. The pig up is real. That's not ignorant. Oh my god.
Irreparable bladder damage. Keep playing.
The fucking definition. The advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, social, and economic equality to men.
They have all that, you asshole. They have all of that.
Not superiority, you.
Yeah, but they're still pushing for more.
What's your end game?
Like
the thing, this is the all right, I'm gonna get this out, Karen, and I'm being driven by the pain in my fucking body. When do feminists say it's done? Because if you will not measure what's happening to men, because that's misogyny, and you just keep pushing and saying every single problem that women face, no matter how minor, if it's just one woman, we got to fix those problems. At some point, you are going to blow past equality into superiority if you have no brakes on this fucking train. You are going to do that, Onision. You are going to do that. If you're constantly helping women to deal with every single possible problem they have and never looking at if there's any corresponding issue for men, eventually what you're creating is a machine that benefits women regardless, doesn't look at the situation for men. So you're creating a machine that in every single circumstance tries to benefit women as much as possible without looking at the circumstance for men. Eventually, you are going to blow past equality into superiority. Eventually.
Agreed.
What is your exit plan? What is how do you determine when that happens, Onision?
When is the job done?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, women have the vote. They have the vote without the draft. They have the vote without any of those pesky responsibilities that men tend to have. They have social equality in the sense that, well, actually they have better social equality in the sense that if you treat a woman the way you would treat a man, you're actually seen as hostily sexist towards women. And if you treat her better than you would treat a man, you're seen as being, treating her equal, right? So they have better than equal social equality, right? They have economic equality to men, and in many cases, much better economic equality to men in terms of the money that is spent, not the money that is earned, right? So you look at the slaves on the cotton plantation, right? And you think, would anybody say those slaves are oppressing their master because their earnings, right? They're more productive than their master is, right?
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. Wage gap only measures who's productive, not who has control over the wage at the end of the day. Karen, I'm going to have to go during one of your rants, or
I was trying to carry the conversation so you could pee.
Oh, fuck. Shit. Well, warn me next time. Let's
Okay,
watch a little bit more, and then you can carry the conversation. I'm dying here.
Okay.
fucking morons, equality. So when you sit here like a fucking jackass opposing your own goddamn human rights.
We are not opposing our own human rights. We have equal human rights. Go ahead, Allison. Pee like you've never peed before. We have equal or greater than equal human rights to men on every single metric that you would say. Blacks are disadvantaged compared to whites. Men are disadvantaged compared to women. Men are more harshly treated by the criminal justice system. They are more likely to be homeless. They are more likely to commit suicide. They are less likely to finish high school or go on to post-secondary education. They are less likely to live to retirement age. They are more likely to die earlier of 14 of the 15 leading causes of death, right? They are more likely to be addicted to drugs and alcohol, more likely to be driven to crime and gang activity. They are more likely to be vulnerable to the vagaries of the universe because the social safety net is geared towards helping women with children, not men, even if the men are the custodians of their children, right? It's much harder for a single father who has custody of his children to even access many services than it is for a single mother who has custody of her children, because he's a man and she's a woman and he's seen as not needing help, right? All of these things. Women have better access to housing. They have better access to healthcare. They have better access to the drugs they need. They have they have more reproductive rights. They have all of these things, right? All of these fucking things they have over and above, right? They are less likely to be victimized by violence. They are more likely to have society take it seriously and the law take it seriously when they are victimized by violence, right? When you look at all of that, if we were talking about black people and white people, we would say every single one of those things indicates that blacks are disadvantaged compared to whites.
Yes.
Yet
and that's the thing.
Somehow you are able to maintain a fiction that men are privileged and women are oppressed, and that the nicer treatment, the more lenient treatment that women receive in the criminal justice system is benevolent sexism against women, and the harsher treatment men receive is patriarchy backfiring on them.
You feel better now? Because I do.
Oh, God. Okay, I'm playing a little more. You know, the problem with this video is it's like really short, but he does jump cuts like bam, 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 bam. And every time he does a jump cut, he says something even more egregious than the last thing he says.
Stupid. More.
Don't help anyone.
I don't help anyone. I help myself. Thank you very much.
You just hurt yourself. So congratulations on punching yourself in the fucking face.
Punching myself in the fucking face.
You know, like, this attitude is why so many people seem to think that so many feminists seem to think that I'm self-loathing, that I'm a self-loathing woman. I mean, like, you must get this too, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, like, I don't hate myself. Actually, if it came right down to it, like, I'm rather more impressed with myself than is probably healthy.
I can't agree with that, but what bugs me about all of this is I don't want to fucking be saved by Onision. I don't want to be saved by a word. I want to do some fucking saving myself. That's that'd
be nice. Like, we get to be the heroes.
Yeah, we get to actually be the ones who can help another group of people for a change instead of constantly being the victims. And again, you know, I'm not against the idea that it's possible that women are victims because they're women, as long as you can give me a rational argument. But so far, I have not heard any kind of rational argument. All I see is a bunch of statistics without any context of the situation for men, and being told that if I don't believe feminism, I should punch myself in the face because I'm an idiot. Yeah, that doesn't convince me of anything. But let's finish. I'm feeling a lot more mellow now because
you're feeling you're not dancing anymore.
Yeah, I'm not dancing anymore.
Feminism
But Onision might actually be filling my rage bladder.
I actually keep envisioning you like sort of hopping from one foot to the other with like your hand over your like crotch, just trying to hold it in, and it amuses me, Allison. It does. That mental image. I'm not saying you're doing that, but that's what I'm imagining.
Well, no, I'm actually quite a bit more relaxed now because of that last rant. Well, you were getting everything out, so was I. So there, let's move.
Okay.
complete fucking idiots. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So
The hand that feeds you.
That's
Okay,
presumptuous.
You don't bite the hand that feeds you. Like, okay, literally, what does that say? Like, okay, a dog shouldn't bite the hand that feeds it. That's like, like if you look at a pet, right?
I'm looking at my pet now. She's extremely yappy.
What are the expectations of a pet? Right? You're going to be provided with everything you need to survive for free. You don't have to work for any of it, right? And you're going to be limited by what your master, like, I don't feel like letting you out right now. You have to be on the chain. You can't just run free. If you want to go for a walk around the block, you're going to have to wait until I feel like I'm going to do it, because I'm in charge of you and I dictate everything that goes on in your life. I'm the one who controls you. Yes, I feed you and I give you water and I give you enough to survive and be healthy. And in return, I expect that you won't bite the hand that feeds you. But what about all that other baggage? Like, does he think that women are just like pets? That that feminism has some authority because feminism is offering us something that feminism thinks is valuable, or necessary for survival, that we have an obligation to submit to whatever restrictions and dictates feminism has for us as well.
Yeah, well, we have to submit to their draconian and authoritarian and fundamentalist view of gender. We have to reduce ourselves down to victims in every conceivable circumstance with no, and if you question it, you have internalized misogyny. That's the trade-off, right? Is that you get all of the benefits of feminism, which include keeping the right to vote, even though that's not really a threat of any sort, and also keeping the paid way, like the Equal Pay Act, which was passed years ago, and I don't think anybody's gonna. But you have all of these benefits, supposedly, and the only thing you have to sacrifice
is your integrity.
Yeah, oh no, just your integrity, your autonomy, and your personhood. The only thing you have to sacrifice.
Your principles and your sense of justice.
Well,
your empathy for other human beings who don't happen to have vaginas. Yeah,
the only thing you have to sacrifice is any understanding of how your actions matter. It's a little bit of a trick, though. Like that's the only thing. I mean, having consequences to your actions, that seems to be the only reason to be alive.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at video games, and the whole point of video games is that there are consequences. Like, a video game wouldn't be fun if you could never run out of life points.
It wouldn't be fun if there was no consequences to your actions in a video game. It would be boring as shit.
Yeah,
this is what.
If every time you ran out of life points, you started exactly where you died, rather than got sent back to the beginning of the level, right? How fun would that be? There would be no challenge to it. There would be no. You wouldn't have to have any ambition. It would just be going through the motions. It would be a completely empty exercise.
So all we have to do as women is reduce our lives into an empty exercise, an empty, meaningless exercise in which our actions have no consequences. That's all we have to do. And then we get all of the benefits of feminism.
Most of which were delivered not by feminism, but by technology and just general progress and the efforts largely of men who died for that, or were imprisoned for that, or were exiled for that. All of those Chartists who died in prison or were sent to Australia. All of those men in the Rhode Island uprising, not just for universal male suffrage, but for comprehensive electoral reform. right? That's what the Chartists and other suffragists before the suffragettes came on the scene, that's what they were going after. They weren't just going after universal male suffrage. They were going after electoral reform on a fundamental scale. And they paid a penalty in blood and lives, right? That suffragettes never paid. And suffragettes firebombed fucking train stations with people in them. And the worst thing that happened to them was they were force-fed in prison when they went on hunger strikes. They were force-fed like every other prisoner was if they went on a hunger strike.
All right. Let's see
So
some
many
more.
women simply don't understand how life was before feminism. I seriously...
Well, feminists certainly don't understand what life was before feminism.
Yeah.
You have the situation where a man in my great-grandmother's time, right, would walk down the hill home from the coal mine so covered in black that you couldn't recognize him, right? And he would hand his paycheck over to his wife, and his wife managed all of the money.
That's very common. Let's keep going, though.
Have a hard time believing society today. We're acting like a bunch of fucking spoiled teenagers who have had everything
We're acting like a bunch of spoiled teenagers? I've raised teenagers. And
the other thing is,
teenagers are not spoiled.
I think that's his hope, because if we were a bunch of spoiled teenagers, he'd want some of that. He'd want to be right up in that.
Okay, this is a 36-year-old man, something like that.
Holy shit, man! Act your age. And this is the guy who likes him young.
He presents himself like he's a teenager. He acts like a teenager. He talks like a teenager. He thinks like a teenager, and his audience is full of teenagers. And he's accusing women who are like, you know what? I don't actually need feminism. I don't need this bullshitty thing, right? He's acting like they are immature.
Well, yeah, it's like I find that feminism punches me in the face, and I don't need to be punched in the face. Oh, you're just internalized misogyny. You're an idiot. Well, no, I literally find that feminism is punching me in the face, and I wish it would stop. Thank you. As a woman, I find that feminism is punching me in the face right now, and I am not convinced by feminism saying, if I wasn't punching you in the face, you would be shot in the head. Well, yeah. I don't. Could you give me a good argument here?
By whom?
But by whom? And
convince me that that's actually the case.
Yeah, let's convince me that this is actually the case. Until you convince me this is actually the case, I'm going to request feminism stop punching me in the fucking face. Thank you. Let's move on.
To us. And what do? We turn towards our ancestors, the people who came before us, metaphorically our parents. And we say, fuck you for being so caring, so considerate, so loving.
Yeah, no, fuck you, all the men through history, right? All the men who wrote the Bible, and those Bible verses that said, love your wife as Christ loved the church. In other words, be willing to die for her, right? And support all of your female relatives who don't have a man to support them. You should be there to support your unmarried sisters and your daughters and your widowed mother. And you, that's your responsibility, man, right? And the men who wrote that book, right? We're looking at them and saying, fuck you for caring so much.
Yeah. Okay.
For sacrificing yourself for the sake of my advancement in this.
Yeah, sacrificing yourself by going to war for the sake of protecting the women in your country.
Oh, if feminism wasn't so mean-spirited when it came to men in the past. I mean, these are the men who never questioned when they were turned out by their families as young men.
Yeah.
To either die or earn a wage. They never questioned it. They never questioned the fact that they had to turn their money over to their female relatives or their wives, that they had to support women. They never questioned this. They never changed it. until women were able to support themselves, and then we got a little bit more balance. But we have to look at those men throughout history and what they suffered. And we have to ignore not just the suffering, but we also have to implicate them as being horrible human beings. No, thank you, feminism. I don't want to.
The entire Western literary canon, right? What's the easiest way for anyone, any writer, and particularly since this was mostly men writing this literature, right? What's the easiest way to identify a villain? By his willingness to harm women. What's the easiest way to identify the hero? By his willingness to avenge that harm.
On men.
On the man who did it.
And on men in general. Like often, the hero is the one who's willing to do the most harm to other men in avenging the woman. Okay.
Yeah. World. Because I'm an ungrateful, spoiled piece of shit.
Yes, you are.
I'm so stupid, I don't even realize by holding up this sign.
You are so stupid you don't even realize by making this video that you've managed to come across as a complete fucking retard.
And I'm begging for things to go back to the way they were before feminism existed. So
you don't want to know what life would be like for you before feminism existed.
Onision, you would be totally... You think that you're going to get some underage poon whenever you want, just pick them off the vine 50 years ago? Guess what? Not only would you have a shotgun at your back, but you probably would also be possibly jailed. Frank Sinatra was, because he ended up having sex with a woman, didn't give her the relationship she wanted. And yeah, that was a crime.
Yeah, seduction was a
promise. Breach of promise, Onision.
Yeah, no, and on top of that, right? How much better do you think your divorce would have gone if your wife was someone who, when she married you, was signing a contract that said you would support her for life?
Yeah.
Financially.
The other thing is, does he have kids?
I don't think so.
Oh, good.
I hope he doesn't ever. Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like the kind of guy who really would be a father. I'm terrified at the thought. I apologize, Onision, but you just...
Yeah, no, it just, I don't see, there's an air, that fathers who really fit to the bill that they have, and he
doesn't have that air.
Well, I mean, like, I look at him and I think, he's 15 years old.
Yeah. The other thing is that it's interesting how someone who obviously is very much sexually attracted to women who are 14 to 18, maybe.
Yeah.
He's an ebophile. He likes them young. I mean, sexually in the process of sexual maturation, but he likes them young.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with finding women that age attractive.
And yet he's actually promoting that women adopt a mentality, a feminist mentality, in which they see themselves as helpless victims.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't the relationship between those two things strikes me as interesting, because he's promoting a childlike mentality in women.
Yeah.
And to focus on how they are simply responding to other people's actions. Adults focus on their ability to respond to circumstances, their ability to take positive action to affect a good outcome. That's what adults focus on. Children focus on how they're being acted upon, because they haven't developed that sense of efficacy and potency yet. So he's encouraging a childlike mentality in women, and he likes childish women. He likes very, very young women. So it's sort of interesting. I just thought I would throw that out.
Yeah, no, agreed.
If you are going to be so goddamn stupid as to oppose your own gender's equality to the other gender, do not...
Why? How do you think that opposing feminism is opposing equality, right? Women have equality, right? Feminism should have kicked up its feet, cracked a cold one, and said, and patted itself on the back for a job well done 30 years ago. 30 fucking years ago, it should have done that.
And we might still have, 40% of the people in STEM be female.
We might.
Or even higher, maybe.
Yeah, because without feminists, you wouldn't have the right to vote. You oppose them, that would be hypocritical for you to vote. Do not accept a pay...
I don't vote, Onision. I don't vote. You know why, Onision? Because like Mother Jones said once, Mother Jones, a left-wing icon, a leader of the early labor movement, you don't need the vote to raise hell. You can actually get more accomplished by speaking your mind in a public square, in a town square, in a public venue. You can get more accomplished than by throwing your little chip into the bucket of 21 million chips, right? 21 million fucking chips in my country.
So
and mine is going to make a fucking difference? I don't think so.
But it's like, I like how this is all framed as a threat.
Oh yeah,
I believe feminism, or face the lash,
face the consequences, the horrible consequences of just being able to, bring about prohibition almost single-handedly and abolition almost single-handedly before women had the right to vote. Oh my goodness, we just have to settle for that kind of power.
Yeah, we just have to settle for the the regular old female power.
Yeah, no, like that. I'm just like, I'm so terrified of not having the vote.
So I have to. So like, yeah, and let's finish. We're in the home stretch here.
The home stretch. 30 seconds more.
Male coworkers refuse it and say, no, I'm against feminism. I want to be paid less.
Yeah, except for that there is no evidence that women are paid less for equal work. So, yeah.
And the only time where that was socially acceptable and legally acceptable, men were expected to. Okay, so Onision, I'm your sister 100 years ago, and you get paid more than me. But at the end of the day, if I decide all I want to do with my life is sit on my couch, eat bonbons, and read salacious literature, guess what? You're paying. You're paying, friend Onision. Go into the coal mines. Mine some coal so I can sit on my ass.
Yeah. No, yeah. And if your wife was like totally useless as tits on a boar, right? You still owe her a living till she's dead.
That's right. Got a useless wife, Onision? Not only are you paying for her, but you get to come home and do her work too.
She doesn't cook, she doesn't clean, she doesn't fuck, right? You can't force her to go out and work. So, she's...
And for those of you who say the marital rape thing, well, actually, you couldn't... 100 years ago, there were laws and a lot of social censure when it came for men to use violence against women. So good luck, raping your wife without any... I don't mean to impugn you, particularly Onision, that if your wife didn't put out that you would rape her. I don't know. I don't know if you would do that. But if you did 100 years ago,
yeah,
you could be fucking lynched.
Yeah, no, and the thing that really drives me crazy about that is that the whole reason why there wasn't a concept of marital rape is because when you got married, you were actually giving your consent to, you were agreeing to have a sexual relationship with somebody, right? There was nobody, the whole purpose of marriage was sex and reproduction, teamwork, towards having sex and having children, right? So like, there's no reason to get married. If you're going to get married and you're like, when I get married, I hope I never have sex again. Yeah, no, that's like completely stupid. It's completely bogus. And there were provisions in the marital contract, just like in Iranian law, in Western law, both men and women had an entitlement to have a sex life within marriage. Not sex every moment they demanded it, but a sex life that they would negotiate. But the expectation that there would be sex within marriage was understood as part of the contract, and it was understood as something that women owed to men and men owed to women.
Yeah, and if you look at the actual legal and social situations, men were a lot more under the 8 ball for the sex thing than women were, because again, if they didn't give women sex in a marriage, and then what's interesting about the feminist marital rape laws is they never look at the other side, the fact that men were obligated to have sex with their wives. If they didn't, they could be divorced a lot more easily than women could be. Yeah. So it's if you want to look at the threat, and then the other thing is that women could legally use any level of violence against their husband to extort whatever they wanted out of him. Legally.
Yeah, no, any violence by a woman against her husband, that was all dealt with extra legally. There was no provision in any law that I can find, other than maybe, in Massachusetts, in the early colonies in the 1600s, there was a law that said no spouse shall strike the other in violence, right? But most domestic violence laws were completely one-sided. They only protected women from domestic violence. And so essentially you have this situation. It's the same with Iranian family law, right? There are provisions in Iranian family law to protect women from domestic violence if there's a risk of injury to her person, physical, financial injury, or injury to her dignity. She is free to move out of the house, live in a separate residence paid for by him to the level she's become accustomed to, including servants if she's used to having them, right? And he does not have any right to make her move back. And then she, of course, as the wife, she can prevent him from taking another wife. So she can essentially doom him to a life of celibacy on his dime, living on his dime, if there's any risk that she might be acted upon violently by him. There's no provision in those laws that even suggests that there's a possibility that a woman might be violent to her husband and that there should be some remedy for that. Yeah. Right? And the only remedy for domestic violence by women against men in our Western past has been extra-legal, community-based shaming of the man.
That's it. And okay, but so Onision, okay, let's do this, friend. Let's do this. You can go back in time with me, and we can get married, and I can show you just how fucking bad it was for you. Oh shit, but metaphorically, I don't mean actually.
Yeah, no, honestly, he has such a punchable face, right? And I'm not a violent person. I can be angry, I can get angry, but I'm not a violent person. But I could literally fucking punch him right in the face right now. I could do it because he's just so fucking smug and he thinks he knows everything. And he's like, everybody who disagrees with me is a fucking moron. I could do that. I could do, and I would happily do that for 5 years. I would marry him and punch him in the face every day for 5 years. And you know what? The worst thing that would happen to me is I'd have to stand there while he was strapped to a cart and paraded around the town while people threw rotten food at him and jeered and harassed and said mean things about him.
Or maybe you could decide that you wanted a divorce. And, Onision, I've decided that I want to divorce you. And I've also decided the reason why I want to divorce you is because of impotence. So if you don't want to have to divorce me and pay my way, you're going to have to go in the courtroom and endure a humiliating trial in which you attempt to prove that you don't have impotence in front of a goddamn judge and a professional impotence examiner who usually was the old woman down the street.
Yeah, the toothless old crone, right? Yeah, no, you better get it up. Think about the gummer. Think about the gummer, Onision. Think about it. Like just fantasize about the gummer.
Yeah.
Because
this is getting really dark. And again, people, we don't advocate violence, but seriously, this individual is threatening us. He's saying we have to submit to his bullshit ideology because sometime in the past we would have been hurt by men. When in fact
he's never, just like every other feminist, he has never once considered what things were like for men back then.
Yeah.
He's literally looking at it like, if men had, more pay today than women, for the same job, that would be really horrible. Therefore, it was horrible back then, right? Because he's completely ignoring 90% of the social norms and the legal norms that essentially said men need to actually use that money to support women. Even when you look at like purchases, right, for personal items, 75% of items bought are purchased for women. Whether they're purchased by women or men, they are purchased for women. Clothing, yep. Shoes, perfume, cosmetics, hairbrushes, freaking antiperspirant, razors, like all of those things, right? 75% of those personal items are purchased for women.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. He threatens us with a past that he has absolutely no knowledge of. In order to, it's like literally, this is how feminism views. This is how I view feminism at this point in time. Feminism is punching me in the face. Punching me in the face. And when Onision pauses in punching me in the face, he says, "Oh, 100 years ago, men treated women worse. And if I don't get to punch you in the face now, you'll have to go back to that." I'm like, okay, that's a real, can we get some evidence here?
No, I would absolutely, if like my boyfriend has a cousin, right? And he's one of those guys that he will actually come out and admit that he hasn't done any research on the topic and he hasn't looked into it and he doesn't know anything about it, but he's still right. Right?
Yes.
And he says to me, "Okay, but you have to admit you wouldn't want to live in Iran." And I said, "Of course I wouldn't, but if I lived in Iran, I'd much rather be a woman than a man."
The only place that I think...
Disgusted look, right? I've looked into it. I've actually researched it. He's admitted he has no idea what things are actually like there, right? And he's looking at me like I've grown I've like grown some gigantic boil with the face of like, I don't know, move along, kid, you bother me. That freaking comedian dude from the 20s or 30s, on the side of my head, right? Like he's looking at me like I'm some kind of monster because I'm like, you know what? If I lived in Iran, I'd rather be a woman than a man.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like this is the entire construct. You get these feminist men who come up to you and say, submit, woman, submit.
Yep.
Or those men over there will get you. And I'm like, oh, I don't think that's true. And they're like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not going to submit to your shitty ideology, your shitty fundamentalist conception of gender.
Oh, this is what bothered me about Cenk, right? Like when we talked about suffrage and I talked about the sort of the domestic terrorism that suffragettes were engaged in, right? And he said, "Oh yeah, because men would totally have given them the vote if they hadn't been doing that." Right? And I'm thinking to myself, what makes you think you're so fucking special? What makes you think that you're different from every other man who has ever lived, that you would have given women the vote, but none of the other men in the past would have given women the vote?
Well, I think that's the point. I mean, I think a lot of these guys don't think that they would benefit women without some sort of commiserate. I don't know what to say. Like, yeah.
I think it's essentially it's one good man syndrome. It's essentially it's the same reason why Blackstone, why Theodore Roosevelt thought it was such a unique and revolutionary idea to bring back the whipping post for men who beat their wives, right? Because he, unlike the men of the past, think domestic violence against women is wrong, right? And then you go back 150 years and you find that, Blackstone was saying, oh, well, men in the past, those nasty, dirty men of the past, they beat their wives. But we, in the more enlightened age of Charles II, women are such a favorite of ours that women may have the security of the peace against their husbands, and men are not allowed to use violence or restraint against them, right, under law. So essentially, it's a way, I think it's a way for these men to distinguish themselves as those men over there are bad men. I'm the good man, right? and being able to say about those other men, whether they're men of the past or men of some other culture, right, that they mistreat their women, right?
Well, I actually
distinguish themselves as superlative, you know, in the sense of their masculinity. They are the ideal of masculinity.
But there's another element to this, like you're the cousin that you had who thought that you or sprouted another head.
Yeah.
When you said, you know, essentially the whole structure is this. He's using threat of Iranian culture to make you submit to this particular concept of gender.
Yeah.
So he's essentially saying he's using a threat to make you submit to the concept of gender that he thinks is appropriate for women to have. And this is progressive.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is what's so funny. It's like feminist women don't even notice this.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, and
they don't even notice how they're being degraded and insulted and mocked. These individuals like Onision, they are using threats and your ignorance about the actual situation of other cultures and history to make you submit to their conception of what a woman should do and think and act. And you don't look at that and say, hey, no, fuck, yeah, no, I don't think so. No, what you do as feminist women is, yes, sir, oh, yes, sir, of course I'm going to submit. I can't possibly have any agency without you. You know, like, what? Don't you ever just stop and say to yourself, wow, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. This guy is using threats and my ignorance against me to force me into his vision of what women should think and do. You don't, if feminist women don't ever look at that and say, hey, there's something wrong here. Because I know even before I had the words to explain this, when guys did this shit to me, I knew. I couldn't explain it in words.
Felt creeped down.
Felt it.
Yeah.
I just felt it when feminist men would come up and say, hey, you know that men in the past or men in this culture do these horrible things to you, or men who aren't feminists do these horrible things to you, so therefore you fucking submit, bitch! You submit! You fucking submit! You submit to my ideas about what you think and what you do, woman! You submit! And it's like, you're like listening to this, and even before I had the words to explain what they were doing, and I apologize for blowing people's ears out, even before I had the words to explain what they were doing, I could feel it.
Yeah.
Now I have the words, thanks to men's issues and men's rights. Now I have the words to explain it.
No, what gets me too is this, you know, like I kind of almost the brand of feminism that essentially says, well, men can only be allies, or that is entirely separatist. I look at that and I think, well, at least it's pure, right? At least it's chosen, even if it's completely bogus, even if it's fucked up, right? They're not submitting to a man dictating to them how they should think and feel. They're submitting to their own perceptions of their lack of agency, their lack of empowerment, their lack of ability to be effective in the world. And the fact that I think that a lot of these women have incredible inferiority complexes. They just don't think that they could compete in a world with men. They want to be separatists because they can't compete in a world with men, or they want men to not be feminists but be allies and to sit down and shut up because they are concerned that their ideas will not stand up to the challenge of, you know, to the challenge if men are allowed to speak as well, right? But at the same time, at least they're pure, at least their hatred for men, right, and their dismissal of men is pure, it's unfettered, it's uncomplicated, it's just completely blatant, and it's out there, and it's obvious, and it's bluntly spoken, right? When it comes to this kind of guy like Onision, and when it comes to even someone like Gian Gomeshi, right, and how he was such a panderer. Anybody who he brought on his show on CBC Radio who was a feminist, he was like literally nibbling their labia minora as they were, you know, giving the interview. Like, and then he turns out to be like a sadistic sexual predator. Oh, I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked that this man who wants to be around women who constantly talk about how women are in an inferior position, how women are powerless, how women are not empowered, how women are vulnerable, how women are, you know, at the mercy of male sexual predation, how women don't report their sexual assaults because they're inherently weak in some way, you know, or men are able to dominate them, right? And convince them not to report their assaults, right? I can't imagine why a sadistic male sexual predator would want to be around these women. Like, how could that be? Right? Because all they're doing,
the harem of fucking simps.
all they're doing when they talk like that is stroking his dick.
It's like, it's this, and I'm like, if I remember, I was watching this astounding like display of like this feminist meeting, and all of these women just talking about how they have absolutely no ability to like they're just every single situation. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm looking at the guys sitting in the corner nursing chubbies.
Yeah.
Just smiling smugly to themselves. And I'm thinking, you don't even notice that, ladies. You don't even notice that. And this, for me, I was like, oh God, some of these guys are dangerous.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be in a dark alley with some of them. But you are sitting there making yourselves into the perfect victim.
Yeah.
You're by abdicating any and all control over your own consequences to your life. You're making yourself, you're saying that I am completely and utterly beholden to the choices of men. No, you fuck no. No. I will give a lot to men. I will care about them. I will advocate for their issues. I will want to see when they're vulnerable that they get the resources they need. But I am not fucking giving my agency to men. Period. No. And I am not going to do it. And if you're going to present that shit and call it progressive, I'm going to call it out for what it is. Onision, you like him pliant, you like him submissive, you like him simpy and servile and young and stupid and not able to realize that their consequences are the biggest determinant of their outcomes. That's the way you like them. You like them like children. It's the way you want to keep women. And men like you, that's the way you want to keep women. Well, no. I'm not gonna take part.
he like it's like he wants to position himself as the shepherd and we're his flock. You know, and if we wander, we might get caught in a stream and flood and be washed away, you know, if we wander away from what he thinks is right. And
it's fucking patronizing.
It's disgusting. It's just like
and where it's not patronizing, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous message to give girls.
His entire attitude, like, and this is what really gets me, and it gets me with Lacey Green too, right? Because, like, and I actually think that Lacey Green, there's a certain sort of air of well-meaningness about her. Like I think she actually genuinely believes that she's working toward the greater good. But she's so off base on so many things, right? And her audience is like 12 to 15-year-old girls, just like Onision's audience, 12 to 15-year-old girls. And so essentially these people have like these girls who are, and these are girls who are going through puberty. They're going through like massive changes in their hormone levels and the way they feel about things and their moods and their sense of self, their self-esteem and their ability to see themselves as persons and all of these things that people go through when they go through puberty, right? And they're being actively targeted by people like Onision and by people like Lacey Green, who have messages that are harmful. Like there's varying degrees of harm in their messages. But these messages, that they're not messages that are empowering to women and girls. They're messages that are essentially like what's Onision saying in this entire thing? Women need this movement. If women don't have this movement, then women can't have reasonable, rational, wonderful, satisfying, fulfilling lives.
Well, they're saying they're turning these young girls around and saying stay in childhood.
Yeah.
And it's
they're saying you need help just to survive.
Yeah. You don't. I mean, if I were to say anything to young women, it's you have every ability to make the world what you want through hard work. Focus on who you are as a person. Hard work, it's it. That's all that it gets you anywhere. Initiative and hard work.
You know, like take things upon yourself, right? Don't ask permission, right? Don't wait to be invited. Just do it.
Yeah, but the thing is, and don't be jealous of other women, because for the most part, they get when women get something, other women get something particular to them, it's because they work hard. Mm-hmm. I know women who are slender, they work at it.
Yeah.
That's something that they have earned. Women who are smart, that's something they've earned through effort. They've done the work.
Yeah.
Women who have the ability to draw, they've done the work. And that's the only thing. You don't get jealous of other women because they've done the work. Just do the work.
Yeah.
That's what young girls need to know.
Well, and they need to know that life wasn't designed to be easy.
No, but if you do the work, you will most likely get somewhere. Unless you get
exactly where you want it to go, but you're going to get somewhere. You're going to be able to advance yourself. You're going to be able to improve your position. And
sometimes knowing that you have the discipline to do the work, knowing that you have the discipline to keep your nose to the grindstone is its own reward.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what girls need to, there's nobody keeping you from anything. Nothing. Yeah. That's nothing.
Like it just, I don't understand. Like, why do they want to handicap girls? I don't get it. I really don't. Okay, but we have to get through this. We really. Do. I don't even know what time it is.
It's too late.
Okay, I'm gonna hit the button.
You want to divorce him? Well, tough fucking luck. If there were no one fighting for women's rights, do you really think you'd have the ability to divorce someone?
Yes,
you would.
Stuck with him because in your ideal world without feminists, you don't have the right to decide who you're with. No.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, marriage was different in the past, but women still had some say in it.
Yeah, and men didn't have a whole lot more say than women. A man would maybe have a choice of, his parents would say, okay, you get to choose between these 3 women.
And then the woman might have a choice between a few suitors themselves. So, but let's finish this.
In this crazy, bonkers, anti-feminist, fucktard world, you're some kind of inferior creature.
In the anti-feminist world, we're inferior. But in the feminist world, where we're perpetual victims, we're not inferior.
They exist to serve rather than live as their own independent entity. So,
whoa, wait a second. I'm living as my own independent entity, Onision. And you can't stop me, and I don't need to tithe to feminism to do it.
Yeah, no, and honestly, if anybody actually accused me of existing to serve, I would just laugh at them because, frankly, it's my boyfriend who's had to make way more concessions than I have in order to maintain this relationship.
But the other thing is that, what I think you've served Onision. You got served, friend.
Oh, yeah. You got served. Burn.
Why are some feminism? Because they're fucking stupid and they have no idea what it was like before feminism.
What is this bullshit?
We have no idea what it was like before feminism.
I feel like someone's ego just ejaculated in my face here.
Yeah, well, look at this. This
anything. Let's see it.
No, that's like, you know who he reminds me of, right? Do you remember there was a band that oh god, I forget what they were called, but there was a band, Ian Astbury was the singer for them, and he did the Smoke, she is a rising fire. Smoke, smoke on the horizon, baby. Right? And when they performed live, one of the critics described him as an exhausted, drunk flamenco dancer. And like just sort of this, like everything about him was artifice, and it was sort of hanging by a thread. And if he was a little tired, it would just shine through that it was all artifice. It was all just show. And this picture just reminds me of that. It was like, yeah. He's...
Let's go to the end.
Okay.
Robots, we are not slaves. We are Banana Nation.
We are not slaves. We are Banana Nation.
Warning.
Okay, well, that's done. We got through it.
Holy crap. Oh, yes. All right.
It was, I'm gonna stop screen sharing. I'm gonna turn my fucking camera on. And
oh my God.
you can see how, oh, wait, why is my camera not working? I don't know. Wait.
No, you're fine. You don't need, well, you don't need to have your camera on. Oh, there you go.
There.
Hi. I'm not going to put my camera on
Oh my God.
because my internet sucks.
It was very difficult, Allison.
It's okay. We got through it.
It was.
Got through it. We're at the end here.
I didn't froth at the mouth during the actual thing.
Yeah, I think my most favorite moment was when I got to go to the bathroom. When I went to the bathroom.
Oh yeah, no, that was my favorite moment too, because you got to go to the bathroom and it was like sort of a necessary thing, and it was like all of the rest of it was like so unnecessary. It was just,
Onision, you kept me from the bathroom.
why are we doing this? Why, like, oh my God. Yeah.
Don't worry, the ennui will pass.
Ugh.
Okay.
I don't think it's ennui. I think it's malaise.
Malaise. The
Yeah.
malaise will pass.
I think I want to go drink a lot.
Yeah.
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 I'm gonna
Okay.
go do that.
You go do that.
All right.
So, if you guys enjoyed this incredible experience, please consider supporting us so that we can do it more. Wait. There's a flaw there. There's a flaw in that logic, Karen. I just realized
I
it.
don't want to do it more.
Ah.